Today's guest is the eminent Brian Buford. Brian is the Executive Director for University Culture and Employee Success at the University of Louisville, Kentucky. With 35 years of university service, he has dedicated his career to building a campus community where all students, faculty, and staff feel welcome, safe, and included. Brian opened Kentucky's first staffed LGBT Center in 2007, which earned a 5-star rating on the Campus Pride Index 6 years in a row, spearheading the effort to being named the most LGBT-welcoming campus in the United States by LGBT Outfitters. In 2020, Brian launched the Employee Success Center, dedicated to making the university a great place to work by offering opportunities for personal and professional growth to faculty and staff. He is a certified Gallup-Clifton Strengths Coach, chairs the Leadership Louisville Inclusion Council, is the host of Employee Success Podcast, and is a frequent guest speaker and consultant on issues of employee engagement, diversity and equity, and LGBTQ inclusion. You're listening to Psilocybin Says. To support it, subscribe on YouTube and podcasts, and stay connected on Instagram and TikTok. And now, please welcome Brian Buford.
Hey. All right, here we are, Brian.
Hey.
Welcome to Psilocybin Says.
Thank you.
Welcome to our home studio.
I love it. Your
Everything.
forest.
Our forest.
Yes.
Did you notice the boa constrictor in there?
Are
you afraid?
I didn't
how do you
see
feel
it.
about
I knew something had to be in there. I haven't spotted it yet.
It's okay. We can check them out later.
Okay.
There's got to be a reason for all these plants behind glass.
I know. That's what I thought. Oh my gosh. No, I'm so excited to be here. You all, I know we really just met, but I feel like you've like we're old friends and we've been through this amazing thing together. So I've been so excited to see you and
Yeah.
Really appreciated you coming into the community circles and stuff as well, seeing you engage with the community. Yeah, did I
That's
tell you?
right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
yeah. I feel so fortunate to be here where I can access that stuff, where there's a community and there are spaces. I absolutely couldn't wait to get to those afterwards and to see people again and to hear people tell their stories. So grateful. What you all are doing is amazing work.
Thank you for being a part of it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's everything.
What we're all doing here.
Yeah, that's-
you're a
I'm
part of it.
honored.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And it is so cool, like as we were talking at the retreat recently, just figuring out that we know people just outside of Sanctuary that we're connected with for a long time, that we're good friends with, which is just adds another layer to this feeling of
Yes.
like community and
It is.
being together.
I've been really curious how that individual, who we won't name, that you all have as mutual friends, does she now know about your experience with?
I don't know. She probably not because I haven't seen her in a while. She's not, we don't work together anymore.
Yeah.
But I can't wait to see her. Yeah, there's another Athena from the church. We were like, we know each other. And then we figured out we work out in the same place. Like,
Oh my gosh, I didn't know
workout.
that. Wow. That's cool.
Well, the thing that we're finding is this is, even though it's happening right here in Louisville like that, it's also happening around the country. We've got in Maine, just found out that there are 3 members who are very close to each other in Maine, and they're all going to be going to a Fungi Fest up in Maine.
Goodness.
One of them's going to be talking there. We've got people in the Southwest that are starting to connect. So it's just such a wonderful thing, seeing community build.
Yeah, and on discovery calls more and more recently,
Yeah.
because we'll have as part of membership, on the 5th step, as you know, is to have a group call.
Yes.
Where you can ask all your questions and everything. And more, they're getting bigger and bigger and more frequently.
Yep.
And more people are seeing each other on the calls. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're becoming a member of Sanctuary.
I know you.
Oh my gosh, like, we didn't even
That's so
I had
wild.
no idea. And it's just, every time it happens, I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
This is so good. It feels so good.
It's so beautiful to see that happen. I mean, the group I met was from all over the place, really. And just that, and then, people that live down the street from me or work out at the same place that I do. Like, that's pretty incredible. So,
So
I feel
tell
blessed.
our audience, Brian, like, how did you even come in to the mushroom? How did you get to where we are right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because had anybody told me even 6 months ago that I'd be having this conversation, or I wouldn't have believed it. It wasn't at all in my thinking or just wasn't on my radar at all. But like I've been on this long spiritual journey in my life and like really just, thinking about, what my life is all about and my purpose. I've been working through past trauma and PTSD. And so I don't know, like, I guess like a lot of people now, like I think of myself as like sort of a mainstream kind of person that like read Michael Pollan's book and started to, I heard like an NPR report that psilocybin was, on the verge of being legalized in some places as a treatment option. And so it just started, how like that synchronicity when you start to think about something, then it just starts popping up in all these different places. And then as it turns out, my therapist, who's amazing, is also like just looking at the value of psilocybin as a trauma, as a treatment for trauma. And so, I mean, really that way. And then I just did the old fashioned like Google search and I started finding out about ways to connect with other people. And that's how I found you all. And I was, I just saw like Sanctuary and, I thought, well, I wonder where this even is. I like when you just first pull it up, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is in my town. Like this is where I live.
I try and imagine myself like 10 years ago when I was first starting to practice with the mushroom, having that experience and the joy that I would have felt seeing a community like forming.
Not me.
People.
I'd have been a
he would have been like,
total fucking
no,
skeptic.
It's already started.
Like, church and mushrooms? No way.
True. Maybe not. You never know.
I would have been like, we have a lot of people who say, I've been watching y'all for like 6 or 8 months and I've checked out some stuff and now I'm feeling comfortable. I would have been that person. It would have taken me time. I'm so skeptical of religion because of the trauma that I've been through of religion. The psychedelic groups tend to be a little, I don't want to be too generalizing here, but there's a lot of woo out there, and I'm becoming more woo woo, but I've historically not been. So
yeah,
10 years ago,
insert
I
clip of Eric meditating with the crystal skull this morning.
I just listened.
Oh,
so
busted.
Here's the other weird thing is that I'm a fan of the podcast. So I've been listening to you. So to be here, like actually on it is really cool.
You.
And I was like, I know that. I know you're like not a mainstream. I mean, I know you're not a woo woo guy. And so that's like very comforting to me. I'm like my personality in some ways is once I found it, I'm like a gas pedal. I want to just go. Like, how fast can I get there? And so it's really, honestly, just been a few months. I just had met the threshold, the time threshold to go on the retreat, like by the skin of my teeth.
So what's the backstory though? What as much as you're willing to share about your personal journey that brought you to investigate psilocybin, I would love to share that with our listeners.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, a lifetime, a lifetime of spiritual searching, and starting my searching in all the traditional church spaces. I grew up in a Christian family, going to a Southern Baptist church and embracing it hard, like I was a very serious kid about religion and the Bible and living a good life. I mean, I wasn't playing around. I was like in it, I was fully in it. And I went to a Christian college. I moved here to go to seminary and become a pastor. Like I was on this very focused trajectory that's what my life was about. It was about ministry and about serving others. And then sort of the wrench in the system was that I also, as a very small kid was just, like my gender expression, the way I sort of moved through the world just singled me out as somebody who's different, who's not like, normal as we would think. And I always knew that I was different, or I would have thought something's wrong with me. I think like the theme of the ongoing sort of voice in my head was always something's wrong with you, and like honestly, like that was reflected back to me too. People said like, you're not doing it right. That's not, your boys don't do that. Boys don't act like that. You know, so family and church and school. I mean, you talk about like religious, like being skeptical about religious identity. It was like the worst things that ever happened to me were from churches and preachers and, you know, Christian people. It took me my whole life. I moved here. I was in seminary. I was getting through the process of getting admitted to seminary before I could like put a word to it and to know that I was gay. I identified as gay, and that, you know, I was in my late 20s, so I was like a really late bloomer. I had just always known like something's wrong, something's not clicking here in my life, but I'll figure it out, or, you know, I'll get married and then all the pieces will fall in place and it'll all make sense. But of course that, you know, that doesn't happen. So I had like a huge sort of crisis in my life of being these two identities that don't really coexist very well. Like I wanted to be a pastor, a Southern Baptist pastor, and like I'm coming out of the closet as a gay man, which are like, these are not
compatible.
Not his little voice was like, this isn't gonna work out.
They don't have like a whole chapter on that in the Southern Baptist Seminary.
How to
integrate
What
those
to
two.
do? Yeah, man. Talk about integrating. Like those could not be integrated.
Before you go too much further, though, if you don't mind, I'm just super curious, because that had to have been such a tumultuous time for you, and I'm wondering if you can even just share, like, what was it like when you acknowledged yourself, like for the first time? And that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, it was the most difficult thing I ever did. I mean, it was just, you know, I teach and talk a lot about LGBT identity, work with a lot of LGBT people and speak to groups a lot. And I sometimes say that being an LGBT person, you know, is the only identity where the world might hate you, you know, other people might hate you, your family might hate you, and God might hate you. You know, in other marginalized communities, you can sometimes go home to a family that shares that identity and loves and embraces you, or, you know, at least at the end of the day, you know, God loves you. But all the messages I got was that if you're gay, like, God does not love you. That is not okay. You're going to hell. And so, like, the thought of losing friends and family and, like, you know, divine love is, I mean, there's nothing harder than that. So it was a really dark time, a really, really dark time. Fortunately, I found, I mean, we talk about community, having a community of support. I found a community of support here, and I started that journey of coming out. It was a long process. And then later, I think because I always felt like I had a calling to service and to, you know, helping other people, I started to find my identity in that, like working with other LGBT people, helping people come out, teaching, you know, others what it means to be LGBT, helping educate and helping schools, you know, all just understand what it means to be an ally to people who are LGBT. So that was sort of my pathway through that darkness, was just still coming back to that other identity, that I could be some kind of minister or some kind of servant.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you're so courageous to do that. I know that so many people never do that their whole lives. Yeah. And they're just so afraid and of the consequences. And to see someone like you who's done it and then went on to mentor people. I mean, and still fairly young. You said in your late 20s.
What year was that?
Really,
Do you mind sharing?
really young to.
That was 1988.
Yeah, so I was going to say,
Okay.
it's
Yeah. So I'm 59. I grew up, I was a kid in the late 60s, early 70s. And I will tell you, there couldn't have been a more difficult time to be a gay child, or even just even a boy that didn't act like a boy, act like this idea that in some ways I think the world has come a long, long way. We have a lot more space for men to express gentleness and emotional connectedness. I think we've come a long way. I think we're also we haven't come a long way. It's sort of, I think both things are true. It's a whole different world. But if you're a little gay child in rural Kentucky somewhere, it may feel like the exact same world that it was for me in 1972,
Totally.
Yeah.
In Jamaica, I mean.
Oh, good God. That's a whole,
that's back in, what are they living in the 30s? As far as that goes, there's no
Somebody
way
get
you have a
killed over some
chance.
shit.
Yeah.
And even, I think even in the public schools here right now, that they're, kids are pretty hard on each other.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
So it wouldn't, I don't think it'd be anything for how, if you want, whatever, a child who was not expressing the norm to get ridiculed. So
we were just talking yesterday about doing a whole episode on the divine feminine and how that impacts all of us. No matter if you're in a male body or female body or whatever, it's just our expression of the feminine it impacts everything, all walks of life.
Yeah.
So.
The research is, it's really interesting, even though I do think that many things have changed. We see more positive images of LGBT people. There's a lot of growth, but the research is pretty clear that kids are committing suicide at the same rate now that they have for decades, 4 times the national average. Much more likely to be bullied in school. LGBT-focused bullying is still as prevalent as it ever was. Being homeless, all the things we don't want kids to go through, the needle hasn't moved very much for them. So, that's where I think I mean, honestly, right now, I think it's even getting worse because we have sort of this national climate right now, especially for trans kids that are, it's the level of intolerance is just out the roof. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of the way I'm seeing it from the outside. Once information comes to light, once we admit to ourselves, this is a reality that some of us express this way and feel this way, then there's okay, well, now we have to deal with all of our pre-existing feelings about that and admit that, we're uncomfortable with that or, and that's who knows how long that'll take. But
look at the civil rights. I mean, we're still
still working through that.
experiencing the reverberations of segregation.
That's right.
Even slavery. Women. My God, women. It's blows me away. It's how women didn't have the suffrage movement and the right to vote in the 20s.
Yeah.
And we're still so far away from.
Yeah.
So, it's sometimes it sucks to be a white dude that's here I am. So I wish I was gay or something, man.
That's why you have to wear shirts with interdimensional beings on them.
There you go.
Find your minority.
No, I really enjoy my role as I see myself as in a subversive role. I always at John Brown, or from the historical figure John Brown, who was the abolitionist.
Oh, right, yes.
He was in middle school. I was that's my white boy right there. That's my dude. And I still that's what I identify with, you know. And psychedelics have been a vehicle of that for me. So go ahead, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was so thinking back to when you were coming out and you mentioned the community here in Louisville and you found your community in Louisville. How was it? Like, did you have therapy at the time? Was that like, the mental health movement is still so recent.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what that experience was like for you.
I did. I had, it's a whole story of its own. I had an initial terrible experience with a therapist who said it wasn't a good idea for me to be gay. Try to.
This is what I'm curious about.
Don't do that.
What?
And my therapeutic goal, this is like really just amazing, was to try to find a girl that I could, have a great sexual
Holy
experience.
shit.
If I could just have good sex with a girl, I'd be okay. So
Was this a religious therapist?
no, this was not. And so, in a way, I look back and think, well, maybe he was brilliant because the more he sort of pushed me in this direction of like, go find a girl, I'd be like, oh, no. So I was like, well, maybe he knew.
Think that way.
Like the absurdity of like being, I was in grad school at the time. So I'd be in a class, like looking around the room thinking like, I don't know. I don't know. Like I'm trying to like size up all the girls in my class thinking like, I don't, like that's never going to happen.
Was homosexuality was listed as a mental illness in the DSM for
it was until what is it, like the early 80s? Surprisingly recent. It was still considered a mental illness, and he was still operating under that sort of mindset. But it was not in the DSM-3 at that point. He should have known better. But yeah, so I did, and then I found good therapists and have been sort of throughout my life, really on both a spiritual journey, looking for, spiritual experiences. Of course, I left. That's the other sort of grief process is I had to leave my spiritual community, my church community, I'll tell you this, I went to a Southern Baptist college and I told some of my friends from college, some of whom were here also in seminary, that I was gay, that I was coming out. And those friends, like in 24 hours, I had no friends. Those folks were like, absolutely not. We're not even gonna have the conversation. You either like repent or we can't see you anymore. So it was a very fast kind of like loss. It was just like in a day, it was like all that was gone. And then just looking for other traditions and other ways to have a spiritual identity.
Yeah. So how did you ever come across any like spiritual communities before Sanctuary that you felt?
I did.
Accepted?
I think the good thing is there is in just about every faith tradition, there are queer people who are within the system. So, there are Catholic, gay Catholics and queer Baptists. And there are people sort of, continuing to gather and connect. I think more and more, I don't know, I think for me, more and more, like the idea of an organized experience, like I started to be less and less trusting of organized faith communities, especially Christian ones. So I was looking like to, like native experiences, or I just started or Buddhist practices that there were less spaces to gather in here, but that's what I felt more drawn toward. And I think because of my experience of losing those relationships and losing those connections was so painful. It's like, I'm not, I'm sure I have sworn a million times I would never join another church. So hello Sanctuary. I was like, this is, the first time I ever even thought about like rejoining a group of folks.
Wow. What
in
an
like
honor.
an official way,
Wow.
Yeah.
I can imagine how hard that would be to just let your walls down and allow yourself to connect with people again, like you're saying, after losing so many people so quickly.
Yeah.
that's really hard.
That's what's hard for me to imagine, is just having like everybody gone at once.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, we kind of, obviously not the same, but we kind of experienced that after we were arrested. A lot of our community kind of
Sure.
dropped off overnight.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean,
out of
my parents
paranoia.
still would like come and see me and that kind of stuff, you know, but like to have like your family, your
Yes,
community, and then
it's
like
not the
that
same.
that idea of God, you know, like even your creator no longer wants you. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I just really it helps to provide a deeper understanding of some of your experience on the retreat, I think, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I was going to say, like you did a lot of therapy, but it seemed like there was still quite a bit of processing to
Oh my
do.
goodness. I'm so, I'm so glad we're getting to talk about this too, because I do feel like everything was leading me to that riverbank, that moment. And what I couldn't have predicted what was going to happen. I didn't have like an idea of what I expected necessarily. But as I reflect on it, it's just like, oh yeah, like of course that's where I found myself. That's where that experience was going to lead me to. Exactly what I needed, exactly where I needed to be. You know, because I think too, like I shifted. I'm like a make lemonade out of the lemons guy. I have high positivity. I love people. And so I just quickly sort of turned my pain into service to others. And I've worked with, hundreds, maybe thousands of LGBT people at this point, helping them find themselves and go on their journey. And so I just channeled all my pain and all my grief into doing that. And I sort of thought well, I'm good. Like I've dealt with, I'm as out can be, and people love me. You know, I have friends who love me and my family loves me. And I've just sort of done all that. I thought, I just thought like, oh, that's good. But I think there was just this also, I think this is true for a lot of queer people, is that they're managing in their lives, but they are still carrying that like existential pain of like, I don't belong here. I'm not wanted here. This world is not for me. And I just didn't even realize that I had that much in me.
Can you share with the audience in as much detail as you are willing to? I mean, I think walking people through the scenario from, like you said, from the time you got on site, through the experience would have some value.
Yeah. Well, even before being on site, it was so I signed up, and I signed up to go on the retreat. And then there was like a little, like, do you want to talk to somebody before? And I was like, I absolutely want to talk to somebody before. I was trying to like gauge my safety, really. And so Eric, you and I had a phone call, and for me, it really was like, hey, am I going to be okay here? This is who I am. And I just want to be sure, like I'm all right. And we had a great conversation, and I very quickly just like realized and recognized you as like a true ally and somebody who I felt comfortable with. So I think that was a really important part. But I was still, I said this earlier, the scariest part of the whole experience for me was getting out of my car and walking into the campsite with a group of people that I didn't know, and knew I was about to have a pretty powerful, vulnerable experience with. That was the scariest moment. I wasn't really nervous about so this was my first mushroom journey. I wasn't as much nervous about that. I was nervous about being vulnerable with a group of other people that I didn't know.
Yeah, it's what a lot of people say when they're talking to us and they're trying to determine, should I have a private service or should I have a group retreat? Please say private service, because I really don't want to be vulnerable in front of other people. Yes. But that is such a big part of the healing component of this
Yes,
practice.
I told you this too. We had a retreat Zoom call, which was also really helpful to see other people. And, one of the participants was a woman of color. And I cannot tell you like how much comfort that brought me. When I walked into the camp, I almost ran to her because I'm like, we're both different. Like we're the only ones. Like I didn't know. I mean, I don't. I'm assuming I'm the only one like me. But I think marginalized people sometimes like just seek each other out, and like, are we going to be okay with all these white straight people? I got your back. You got my back.
What's our game plan?
That's right. I'm checking the exits. My car was blocked in, I have to say. And I was so aware all the time, like, I am not going to be able to jump in the car and like run out of here if I need to.
How much of that is a regular state of mind for you?
It is, and I don't even realize it is. I was really aware of it in that moment, but I think I am always scanning the environment. I think most queer people are always kind of scanning the environment. Am I okay here? Is there anybody? Can I recognize anybody who's like me? How am I going to get out if I need to? What's my exit plan? So I think it's a pretty, and like think about like just the level of like psychic stress that brings with it.
Yeah.
I've worked now with, I do a lot of anti-racist work in my organization, and I hear that same story from folks of color, just, this sort of, they call it, like in the research, they call it minority stress, which is the added stress of always trying to gauge like whether you belong and whether you're safe, and what are you going to do if things get out of hand. Yeah.
It was such an important and valuable experience for us to live in Jamaica and be the minority for so long.
Yeah.
It was such a valuable experience.
That really put things into perspective for me.
And probably was like a level of stress in that experience too for you that you had to learn how to navigate.
For sure.
Yeah, when we decided to move back late 2020, it was like, I felt like a million pounds was let off just from that alone, specifically feeling a part again for the first time in a while.
Yes.
So I can imagine.
Yep.
So you took some mushrooms, you laughed all day.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
Just like Michael Pollan said.
That's right. He was so right. Yeah, it was so funny. We did that. We did like at the end, we did like a debrief, and I don't know about, I am new to all this. I just want to keep reminding folks that I'm new and that it's my first experience. So I'm just learning, but, so I don't know if it's always like this, but there was a retreat group that was having a really beautiful, hilarious, joyful, they laughed a lot, they sang and told jokes. And I was like, I was not in that crowd,
No.
There was like the other end of the camp where we were just retching it out, and that was
pretty typical. It divides off usually.
Pretty normal.
Yeah. So for me, I really started that we were sort of like picking places to be, and there was like, this is going to be the area for people who want to be in the group, and then here's some spaces for people who want to kind of go be by themselves. And I was like, I'm going with the group, I'm going to be, at that point I'd really bonded with everyone, and I like, already sort of loved them all. And so I was like, I'm going to be with the group. But I've moved away from the group, and actually I moved away kind of because people were starting to have their experience, and it was starting to be pretty powerful, and nothing was happening to me. And so I was like, I'm getting out of here. I'll go help them with the dishes or something. I'll go help them make dinner. So I walked down to the other end and sat down for a minute, and I started to cry. And then I started to cry harder, and then I just started to wail. I don't even know another word for it. Wail.
It's pretty good, know.
Yeah. And then I was in, I don't know. Then it was like all that pain, like all that stuff that I think I had been carrying around for years and years and years was just like it was just coming out. It was coming up and coming out. I was just heaving. Sometimes I was on the ground, and sometimes I was like holding on to a picnic table to support me. And I don't know. So one of the things it was a solo. I mean, I was with safe people and people were watching out for me, but it was a solo experience. And one of the things I just knew it needed to be. That was one of the most powerful parts for me, was I was able to just keep going with it. I think there were people who wanted to help me many times. And I was so grateful that no one like tried to console me or comfort me necessarily, but just allowed me to go through it. And it was all, I don't know, I don't even have words for it, because it was like a real like powerful release. But I wasn't scared. I was like, in some ways I was so happy that it was happening. It's just like when you I don't know, like when you finally let go of something that you've been carrying and it hurts, but you're so grateful to let it go. Mm. And so there was there were a couple times when some of my fellow retreat participants, I think, might have wanted to come over and look after me a little bit. And I think you all like very expertly helped them go away so that I could do it. I don't know if that's
someone
right.
asked me if they could go like comfort you, and I was like, no, just let him be.
Yeah.
He's
one person who was laughing a lot, like the group that was laughing a lot, who on their last retreat had quite a hard time. Yeah. So this was quite the opposite experience for them. They kept saying, "Oh, Brian, oh, can I just go on? Oh, just laugh with us, Brian." And I was like, "Oh, Brian's doing it. He's doing great. Don't worry about Brian. He's got it."
Yeah. This is your podcast. I'm not supposed to ask the questions here, but I do want to ask you, like, how did you know? Is it just from years of experience that you know, like, when to comfort and when to let somebody?
Yeah,
go
just
on?
intuitive, I think. I mean, I just don't want to interrupt anybody's process. And, the couple minutes that I came in and sat beside you, that was, the intention behind that was, I don't know if you remember what I said to you. I just said, "Fuck yeah, Brian," and left. Because all I want to do is as light touch as possible, just to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing.
Yep.
And I'm curious, when that was happening, were there specific memories coming up, or was it just kind of a dump of energy?
Yeah, it was very interesting, because maybe if I had like imagined what it would be like, I imagined maybe I would see people from my past, or I would have a conversation with a spiritual being, or maybe, I don't know, maybe my visuals would be all like colors and I don't know, whatever. And it was none of that. Like I didn't have, my vision was perfect. Like what I saw was what was there. No one came, there were nothing came to me. It was just like fire hydrant of grief, just pouring out of me. That was the whole experience. And which is exactly what I know it needed to be.
Mm.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. When you were having that, experiencing the fire hydrant coming out, was there any inclination to like stop it, or what was your thought process as you were experiencing that outflow?
There were a couple of things I was thinking about. One was I kept saying I hope, in my mind I was like, I hope nobody stops me. I hope I want to just go as hard and as long as I can. I hope nobody will stop me. or that I'm not, and also, I mean, a little bit like, I hope I'm not making everybody so uncomfortable that this is like an off. When you're in that moment, or at least when I was in that moment, I had no idea what others were doing. And so I didn't know if everybody was waiting for me, or you just don't know. So I'm like, I hope everybody's else is, I hope I'm not like freaking everybody else out. But just a little, I mean, that's like just a tiny little thought, because it was sort of like, if I am, I'm going to just freak them out some more, because I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to do it. The other thing that I thought about, this is so interesting as when we think about safety and like just identity, was that I remember thinking the night before we had the sacrament that you all talked a little bit about what the staff would be doing, like, that we'll be sort of moving around and checking on you. And I really thought in my mind, like, I only want to be taken care of by women. Like, I want, Amy and Court, like, I want the women to be close by. I don't want to be taken care of by men. I didn't say that to anybody, but that's what in my mind, it's like, that's, I'll feel the most comfortable. What actually happened, because this is just how, the universe is that the folks who were around me most of the day were men, I think straight, cisgender men, I don't know, but, and it was beautiful. I mean, you came and sat by me, Eric, and that was incredible. The other folks who tended to be kind of close by were men, and it was very healing. It was very, very, I felt so close to them at the end of that experience. And I think that was just a spiritual gift to be taken care of, like for a queer man to be taken care of by not queer men who, and I don't know, I hope for like people who listen to this, I love men. I love straight men. I have many, many friends, but there's also like the most sort of hurtful things that happen. The most painful parts of my life were often straight men. So you sort of develop that like distrust. And I thought this really helped. I mean, I think this was an important part of the experience.
How has that translated, if at all, into daily life?
Yeah, I felt so much light at the end of the experience. I felt so much lighter. I mean, I felt physically lighter, but also just like such a load was lifted. And that has really continued to be my experience since then.
Well, I mean, specifically in terms of men, have you found yourself less concerned about stigma or any of it? Or do you feel less resistance maybe, or how do you describe how that?
I think so. I think so. I sure feel like a warmth toward those men, the men who at the retreat. Some I've seen, at the gatherings, and some I've connected with since, and some I haven't. But I've certainly felt like this, like this is like a beautiful thing. Like when you really create a true community, it's healing for everybody, because we can like reconnect. We can sort of rewire that relationship sort of pattern so that we're not so distrusting. And I do feel like that's something that's going to be a profound part of that experience for me.
Good.
Yeah.
How far, what are we, 3-4 weeks now out from the experience itself?
Been almost 4 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I am so grateful for those like Michael Pollan and all the research and the people that have the platforms that have opened the doors to be open to have these experiences. Even though it's, fraught with kind of misinformation and not the full truth of things, I am grateful for all that. But I lost my train of thought. But I was just thinking, like, I was thinking about that, what you said when talking about the outpour of emotion, and wondering what the people around, hoping you weren't interrupting them, or, just that awareness of like, I hope this is okay with them, or they're not going to stop me. And thinking about the clerics and the space and the ministers, and like how we know when to not interrupt, and just all the combination of the things we've talked about, and thinking about just like how much we need the release and the witnessing of the release in community. And that is such a big part of the group experience, is that release and witnessing of the release for the person that's releasing and the people witnessing, to give permission for it to happen. And when I saw you in that outpour, seeing you come in to the retreat positive, like you're saying, you're clearly a positive person who has this inner smile, and seeing you go from that to that that roaring of just letting it out was just so inspiring to me. And I'm just so grateful that you did that, because I do feel like you doing that did give permission to even the people laughing, just knowing like it's okay to just express whatever it is. And we keep ourselves from doing that like most of the time. Out of fear of what's going to be the consequence of me letting myself be me. And letting it out. So.
Yep. I totally agree. I just felt like, it's like for me, like the gift of the mushroom was access, like being able to access that and release it, which is something I probably wanted to do and needed to do. But there were just, I don't know, like barrier. I just couldn't get there. To do it all these years. Like the mushroom experience for me was like this pathway into my authentic self, and to the part of my authentic. I mean, I'm also like my positivity and my happy self is also my authentic self. But there was like a part of my authentic self that I just kept sort of over here, off limits, and certainly didn't share it with other people. And I do think like that is when you're in a place where you can be your most like raw, vulnerable self. I mean, this is a tribute to you all and what you all create, and how, I don't even know how you create it, but to create a space where people can have that kind of experience of being like exactly who they are. Like I think that's so beautiful. I think it's so like stunningly beautiful. There's nothing about that experience that is not just like perfect to me. And I wouldn't change any of it. I wouldn't change a bit about it, because I know it's what was supposed to happen for me.
Yeah. And that's a tribute to our community. And there's just been so many people who, the more that we have shown up as our authentic selves when it's been hard, sharing things that aren't normal, perceived as like the status quo, and just doing it anyway, hoping like we'll find our people this way, fingers crossed. And more people, we just keep magnetizing people that are doing the same thing. And it's creating, and we're only just at the beginning of Sanctuary, this thing we call Sanctuary. But it is so beautiful. And hearing you say that is just, it feels so good.
That is the healing space that people need. That's the opposite of what the world provides. We live in this society where we are constantly putting on different masks, and it's so difficult, especially that the authentic pain, right? And that's the thing we're supposed to cover up. And especially I mean, I think it's everybody, but I know I heard so much like, as a man, as a boy, suck it up, don't cry, go on about your business.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
And I was just like, I have thought about that day and your experience in particular, because for me, and I was down with the other end, taking care of a situation that just required constant maintenance and supervision, and it was wonderful. I was so grateful to be part of what I was part of, and I knew you were okay. But there were like several things that came. For one, the hearing and feeling the depth of your pain, it gave me such an admiration, and also a really like, it was a painful compassion, because it's just like you've been carrying that around for so long, and that was in you, and I was just like, I don't know, it's like such an honor. It's like that, even just to say that just sounds so cliche. Like, it's so special to be there when people are uncovering and opening up those parts of themselves that just need witnessing and need expression. And it just like, I was just like, oh, Brian, I said that several times down there. I was just, oh, Brian, let it go. Just let it go. And I was so afraid, because when I couldn't get down there, or whatever, I was just like, just please, nobody stop him. Please don't just let him fucking go.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really beautiful to share and be a part of.
Oh my gosh. I mean, as you were saying that, I'm thinking the kind of like spiritual experiences we've had in a lot of our lives, or like our like church experiences, is like, here's a standard, and you need to spend your life trying to approach that. Here's what you need to be okay. That's like, here are the rules, here are the guidelines, and try to do this. And if you don't do it, we'll let you know. And this, like what you all are doing, is like, let's have a spiritual community where you get to be who you really, truly, authentically are, whatever that is. Like, that's the standard. Like, find your voice, find your true self, and like live that. And that's the amazing thing to me.
So would you call your experience with the mushroom, would you classify that as a spiritual experience?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? Why? Because most people, I think a lot of people anyway, would not say that was a mystical, and this is something that I have really enjoyed and also been challenged with over the years, is when people have an experience that is like that, or that is, frightening, or, insanity, or whatever it is, people don't want to classify that as a mystical experience, but I believe that it is. I believe every experience with the mushroom is a mystical experience if kind of understood in the proper context. So if you could kind of talk about how 4 hours of intense sobbing relates to a spiritual experience.
Usually the response is like, what the hell was that? I did not sign up for that shit.
I know, because I would also say it was a therapeutic experience. Like the crying for 4 hours, like the release and the crying for 4 hours could certainly be therapeutic. It certainly was therapeutic. The reason why I would also say it was spiritual is that it was sort of like transcendent to me. Like, it wasn't, there was a part of me in that experience that was watching it happen and almost like bringing myself through it. I also was saying, nobody stop me. This is powerful. This is important. And I don't know if that's like, I don't know if I would call that God's voice, but there was a divine sort of part of that experience that knew that what was happening was bigger than just, like an emotional release. It was, that's why I think it was both, and why it was also spiritual. And I think because like the collective experiences of everybody, once we were able to all come back together, like that's the common theme for everybody, was that there was some wisdom. And for me, I'm still learning all this. I'm just still learning what this is, but there's a wisdom that's greater than just us, that knows how to like move us in that direction. And that's spiritual.
So perfectly said.
Yeah, that's kind of when I lost my train of thought. I was thinking about Michael Pollan, and like when Eric asked you, like, how have things been like since, as far as speaking with other men, and it just brought the thought to me about how this is such an ongoing experience, and with people, with community, and it just takes this like ongoing practice of just letting the feelings pop up in different situations over time.
Yeah.
And so what had me think about that was just wondering, like, after you came out of the mushroom experience, or, as you're kind of starting to come back into this realm here, what I want to hear more about that. Like, as you started coming into the space with other people, like that moment of kind of like, okay, stepping out of the mushroom space a little bit now.
While we were there.
Yeah, while you were there.
While we were still there. Yeah, it was beautiful. I feel like I was I feel like I was a slow, I was coming out slowly. And so most of that, the rest of that night, I could barely put words together. I couldn't really explain. I couldn't really talk too much about it. But like what I felt was just the most beautiful outpouring of compassion and love. And I mean, these people like I was so afraid of 24 hours earlier are all like just, like every single person without every single person shared like a moment of just like really like loving. I'm here with you. I wanted to be here. I was with you through that experience. Like that was amazing to me. And so that feeling of like, I was like, I'm going to miss these people. Like I love these people. And I also have got to say, not a group, like where else in any world with that group of people found each other.
Yeah.
We could not have been more different across every spectrum, and so that was like just beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, I want to insert the picture here, the group picture at the end. You just look so free and happy.
I know.
Such a good picture.
So did you, that release that you had, before, could you feel its presence, and after, do you feel its absence?
I feel its absence. I still feel the, I still feel light. I still feel a lightness that I didn't feel before. I don't think I knew before. It's like adding like just grains of sand onto your shoulders over many, many years, and it gets heavier and heavier and heavier, but you don't really realize how heavy it is. I just don't think I realized how heavy it was. I think like all through my life, whether it's a spiritual practice or like being in therapy, all the things I was doing was to try to, access that and to release it. But I did in little ways, but just never in a way that was, so big and powerful and like such an all at once to be able to like unload that much stuff. So I don't think I certainly didn't come into it thinking that I had that much to release.
What do we do to kind of help the broader gay community?
Yeah. That has been the question I've been carrying with me or really just this little vision that's starting to give birth is like, oh my gosh, like I'm, my people, my community, my tribe, with all this sort of lifetime of ostracism and you don't belong here messages, this kind of opportunity for healing and for connecting to their authentic self. And this is powerful. Like this is a powerful, ancient tool here, really. And I've been thinking, like, how do we help people discover this?
Well, let me ask for this first. So, with Nikki on the retreat, I said to her, I was like, look, I lived in Jamaica for a minute. I got a bunch of black friends here in the States. They done told me this is crazy white people shit. So like, I really respect you coming into our community and taking this risk.
Yeah.
But I don't know within the gay community, like, how are psychedelics perceived? Or do you have any input into like within the broader gay community, like MDMA? Like, I think there's a stereotype like Molly,
Sure.
and all that. But
Sure.
What's your experience there?
Yeah, I don't. I think there are psychedelics that have been a part of the LGBT experience. Certainly for gay men. Over the years, but I think mushrooms, psilocybin specifically, I just don't know that it has been either available or people have it just seems maybe not. And just my sort of very casual kind of observation as I've been trying to learn more about, the community you've built and the what I see in online communities, I don't see a whole lot of queer people there. And so I think it hasn't been discovered yet.
It seems so strange, though.
It does. Especially, I think about folks of color and I think about other marginalized communities too, that to have this resource, have this sort of space for healing that could be so powerful. It's a little bit of a mystery to me, although it's one that I'm more and more intrigued to try to tackle, and whether that is just framing. Or, I think sometimes marginalized people, queer people especially, we always assume we are not welcome unless you have to say my name. Mm-hmm. You can't just say everybody's welcome. And that we're going to get that, oh, that's us too. We're that means everybody except for me. So you have to expressly, and so that's where I'm excited to maybe start to, direct message a little bit. Like you are welcome. This is for you. This is a place for you. This is a medicine for you as well.
We have had some LGBTQ folks reach out recently in our membership community and suggest that we specifically put that in our code of ethics on our website as more and more people are coming out in our sanctuary membership, like, hey, by the way, I'm gay or I'm trans or, whatever their expression is that they've kind of kept reserved until they feel safe enough.
Yep.
So that makes all the sense in the world. I would love to explore as you feel more comfortable with our community, having some kind of workshop or a circle that's specifically like a call.
Oh, that'd be incredible.
To that audience of people.
I think so too. I think things like that do make a huge difference. I think, really, when you and I had that phone call, I knew I was going to be okay because I knew that you were comfortable. You just expressed other relationships with gay men and your comfort with queer people, and that's really the message I needed to hear. Mm-hmm. But short of having that conversation, I think it is good to have just some, I always say, put a little pride flag on a computer monitor and I will spot it 10 miles down there. I'm always like, I'll find the pride flag in the room.
I just did add it to the website. I just did shortly. Was it after the retreat? Because just right around that time, within that week period, we had hands raising, like please acknowledge like this community. And, you know, like I've been a part of that community. And so it's important to me. The more and more I feel comfortable talking about my experience and relationships with other women and people and exploring that, I want to feel safe. I want my community to like know, like this is me, this is us, like we are.
This really hits me how, you know, I just like, I've never experienced that. When someone says everyone, I just know they mean me. And like how many people don't experience that, you know, from gay, trans, color. And it's just, God, it hurts to think about how many people just feel like they don't belong, you know?
Yeah. And sometimes it's not true. You know, sometimes we do belong, we just don't know we do. And sometimes it's true. So it's like it's
hard to tell, I would think.
It's hard to tell, especially in a spiritual community. Like sometimes some churches say everyone is welcome here, but that's not what it really is. And sometimes it is welcoming. So I think like declaring, I know like one of the challenges of being an LGBT people is people don't always know you are. Like you have to declare. I mean, sometimes people think you are or assume you are. I mean, when I was even in elementary school, people told me I was. I didn't know that about myself, but other people were sort of assigning that identity to me. But most of us have to declare. And so when people are raising their hand in those conversations, that's beautiful because they are saying like, I want to be seen. And then when they do that, other people are seeing like, oh, I'm not the only one here. Like there are others. So I think that is a powerful, just creating spaces where people can declare that about themselves or like own that, sort of show up that way.
Yeah, that seems really important. I haven't really given that thought, and it seems really important. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And it seems really important, you know, that we have a space for these kind of sub-communities within our community to have their own space to share. Like, you know, you, of course, don't want to encourage segregation, but definitely acknowledge and respect that need for, you know, shared community, shared experiences to be shared among people of that same kind of demographic. And so, you know, we're real young as an organization, but I certainly see the day when Sanctuary has a substantial LGBTQ community that, you know, gets together and does their thing and also integrates with the larger community, and the same thing with people of color. I mean, God, I think it's going to be significantly harder to break through into, you know, those populations more so. I mean, I would expect you would acknowledge that, you know, being a white man still affords you significant privilege.
Oh,
you know?
yeah, absolutely. Right.
Yeah, no, it's been over the years. I mean, I've worked with far more gay men and women in the psychedelic space than African Americans.
Yeah.
Far more.
Yeah.
So I just want to create that's like, I don't know, I've been saying this a lot lately because I really want to message this out to people, especially as Sanctuary starts growing, and, you know, people feed off of the enthusiasm of others. And very often, if we don't really know our authentic self and we see someone enthusiastic about what they're enthusiastic about, and it catches, and if you don't know yourself, then sometimes you think that thing is the thing, you know, and I just keep trying to communicate out that I want my work, the message of my work over the course of my life to be authentic. Embrace your authenticity. It might not be psychedelics for you. It might not be, just because I'm super excited, because people, they're like, oh, now I want to be into psychedelics. And like, that's cool. But like, it's like any profession. Like, you got to really love it. You got to really, really love it to make it your life. So finding whatever it is within yourself that generates that enthusiasm, that is that authentic self expressing. I just want to see that for everybody. And like, that's entirely, I'm so glad that you're feeling that, because that is the motivation behind Sanctuary entirely, is to give people a place where they can really feel safe to be authentic.
Yes. Yes. Completely agree. I mean, that's where our passions intersect, because, in my work, I want people to find what they're passionate about, what they love, what fills them with joy, and to then find a way to do that as much of the time as they possibly can. So I agree. I mean, it may not be that psychedelics is, everybody doesn't have to come live in your passion. You're helping them find their own passion. And I think just by modeling it, I think when you just model, this is what it's like. This is what it feels like when you connect with your higher purpose and what you're supposed to do, and what just absolutely like fills your bucket and fills you with joy. That's the greatest thing in the world. Whatever that thing is. I love that. I feel like I feel like working with my LGBT community, and I've been really fortunate, not many people get to work professionally in their identity. That's a pretty amazing thing. I was the first person in Kentucky to work professionally as an LGBT person. Yeah.
What?
Wow.
Yeah, right?
Wow.
So that's really cool. I told my mom I was going to run an LGBT center, and she was like, they're going to pay you for that? So I was like, I know.
Times they are changing.
Right. Who knew? Like, that's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Not everybody, so I think not everybody has found what that thing is for them yet, but that's what I get excited about.
So what kind of feedback are you getting within your community as you share your experience?
It's been so wonderful. I just think I have such a loving circle of friends who just wanted the best for me. I will say none of my circle of friends had mushroom experiences or knew what I was exactly talking about.
Really?
And so there was like not a skepticism, but like I hope you're going to be okay. Call me the minute you get in the car. Like that sort of, like, I don't know what you're doing, but I hope, but I support you. There's definitely that feeling of support. But I don't know, in some ways kind of educating my circle of friends a little bit about, what this is and why.
So after you've gotten back and shared with them, have they been curious about it, or are they like, okay, well, I'm glad you had that, let's move on to another topic?
Very curious, and like, tell me all about it. My sister, I'm really close to my sister, and she's just like, tell me everything. I want to know from start to finish. And so, that's been wonderful to have to also be part of a circle of friends that, support. I don't know that everybody has that. I don't know. I mean, I think there is some stigma, maybe. It's just like there's stigma around LGBT identity, there might be stigma around psychedelics and like, that people have to navigate. You're kind of moving into a community that, I don't know, might be marginalized in some ways. I mean, maybe isn't like in
the past. I don't know that so much now. You can say that because of mainstreaming. I will say that, like, my family was like, they were not okay with psychedelics for a long time, and then they got used to it. And then when Courtney and I became public about our polyamory, they're like, well, psychedelics are one thing, poly, too much. Sorry.
Yeah. But if you're going to have sex with another person, don't tell your wife. Okay. Yeah, I feel like now versus 10 years ago, it's more of like an experience like you're talking about, where people are kind of like watching and waiting. Like they're interested, they're curious, they want to know about it, but they just like oftentimes don't want to be the first one in their group to take the leap and find out. Whereas 10 years ago, it was more like no, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hear about it. It's just too weird. No reference. But now that more people are talking about it, there's more media exposure about it. It's like seeds have been planted. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, I was publicly advocating for psychedelics. So 2009 is when I started my mushroom farm, and I was doing, talks at Bioneers and stuff. And I was advocating for psychedelics then. And like when I would bring up the subject on stage or whatever, or even just in conversation, like you could just feel people like get uncomfortable and kind of take a step back, and now they lean into it. So
finally everyone want to talk to somebody about this. Don't know who.
The stigma is not there quite so much. We have been there's another individual that I've been talking with over LinkedIn, where we're trying to possibly create like a global psychedelic flag, because it is my identity. I identify first and foremost as a psychedelic person. It's huge in who I am. Huge. So
I like that.
Well, and so to me, I was just thinking about this as you were talking, that's the identity. That's the part of your identity that connects so beautifully to the LGBT community and to folks of color, is that you have that shared experience of, sharing something about yourself, and then there are crickets in the room, like nobody wants to talk about it.
Well, and you don't see it now, but when I was, I minored in Pan-African Studies at U of L, and when I was 20, I stopped combing my hair and grew dreadlocks in order to intentionally try to marginalize myself, because I was sick of white privilege. And it worked. It worked. It was very interesting because what I noticed over time is, I put on dreads, and it was a mess for a long time. And once they, kind of got longer, I would be followed through stores, And so, like, back up a little bit, because I feel like this is an interesting intersect here. I grew up in Washington County, very rural. High Street is where all the black people lived. That was, and the N word was commonplace. But I always noticed that there was so much more solidarity in the African American community than there was in the white community. And I remember as a child thinking just like, man, I wish white people could be cool with each other like that. And so when I go and do the dread thing, I spend some time getting followed through stores, and I started noticing directly that African Americans would speak to me in public and white people wouldn't.
Oh, yeah.
They would acknowledge me. They would look at me and just nod, and it was like I started, like, they can tell that I am, like, I can identify, at least to a certain extent, with what they face. And that was it was so powerful for me. It was hard for me to cut off my locks because I don't like identifying as a white American male. This demographic hasn't really been, super helpful to the rest of the world. And the only reason that I did cut my dreads is because if I was going to become a public psychedelic figure and I was going to help as many people as possible, then I had to go back and be the sheep in wolves' clothing. So it's interesting.
To be sort of accessible, I guess, so that people can. So that's not a barrier to people.
Trust me. Right. Okay. Yeah. And then they come to me, and then I flip the script on them and fuck their whole world up.
Yeah,
and
that's
they're like, nothing's
real. Now that we have this podcast, we have plenty of episodes to listen to before meeting you to find out.
Yeah. That was 2016 when I cut my hair, when I had just first really gone public with the retreats. And
I'm trying to, I'm envisioning you with dreadlocks.
Yeah, it was not pretty.
It's not a good look.
Thinning hair. Yeah, it was.
That's when I met Eric. He had
the
locks down
locks?
here.
That's how I knew she loved me, because She really loved me.
It just doesn't work very well right here at the
it's
top.
Yeah.
Stragglers.
Yeah, you're just kind of, I don't know, you're just kind of masquerading as a, traditional cis white straight man.
100%.
That's right. Although it was cute when you pulled your hair, the locks back in a bun and wore a suit. Then it was like a little more like balanced,
yeah.
It was the holy corduroys and
The holy corduroys.
combo, the mushroom farmer look with the locks. It's a little far off.
Yeah,
on the
there's
spectrum.
actually, I'll send you a link to the YouTube video of me at the mushroom farm
you
with
will.
dreadlocks.
There's a
I look like
YouTube video.
Oh, it's
okay.
it's
Too good.
Yeah, it's
We should
something
put
to
that
see.
on the
Oh,
sanctuary
God.
website just to welcome in marginalized folk. Just so you know, this is where one of the founders started.
Oh, goodness. Wow. So where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? That's the interesting part of my own journey is had this really powerful experience, found this amazing, beautiful group of folks. And so thinking about like what's next personally for me, I'm really grateful for, there are some like things to access with Sanctuary that I'm planning to. So I'm coming to the weekly gatherings and there's some opportunities to learn and grow more. So that's those are all part of my journey as well. And then thinking about how to connect this to my tribe, to my people as well. And I don't know yet. I mean, and that's it's just like a thought, a little spark, a little ember that I'm thinking about what will happen with that.
Well, if there's any way that we can assist personally,
of course,
all for it.
Yeah, I love the idea of having a focused like LGBTQ group that meets and can just, it doesn't have to be formal, just like a circle of people that's exploring together in an open dialogue.
Isn't there? I mean, I think you facilitate like a women's circle.
Yeah, yeah, we have. So we have the community circles, which you've been to, and those are the third Wednesday of the month, and that's our circles in person are open to the community, so you don't have to be a member. Yeah. And then there's the men's circles on the second Wednesdays of the month, and the women's circles on the fourth Wednesday of the month, and there's like an occasional fifth Wednesday of the month where we try and fill in the gaps, or and other times where like we just can't have the usual circle. So, and once we get our own property and community center, which hopefully is going to be sooner than later, we'll have a lot more opportunities for in-person things. So, if you would like to facilitate something,
I got a word. I got a word.
Okay.
This is one of I love doing this. I'm going to buy the URL right after I say it. Psychedelic.
That seems hard to spell.
Psychedelic.
I like it.
Right big in the center. Queer, psych.
Can we do queeradelic? Queeradelic?
I don't know.
Maybe?
I like psychedelic, but I don't. It's not.
We can work with this. We can work with this.
This isn't mine. I put the ball out there. Y'all pick it up and run with it.
Got a lot of domain names.
We do. I'm not going to buy that domain. But like seriously, I would love to see in Louisville Sanctuary be able to facilitate, a space for that community to get informed about psychedelics if that's desired and engage. So anyway, be happy to help with that in any way.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yes,
And
I'm excited
just
to hear
like
that.
your experience, we don't really have to worry about what comes next, because what comes next is going to come into existence on its own. So just let it flow. Don't feel pressure. Everything will present itself at the right time. I don't know what it is. I swear to God, I know you from somewhere. I keep looking. I'm like, where the fuck? I know that I remember you from somewhere.
We're going to figure it out. It's going to be something really.
It doesn't matter. I don't really care. But it's like, it's striking me. It struck me at the retreat and this whole time. And I am like, my brain is trying to place like, where the hell? Anyway.
The first and the fifth Wednesdays. I didn't say the first Wednesday. The first Wednesday and the fifth Wednesday, if there is one, we do different circles.
Okay.
So, just saying.
I think those circles are pretty powerful. I've only been to the one, but I think like having a women's circle is probably a really, really important thing. Having a men's circle, because there's a lot to learn from everybody being together, and there's a lot to learn when you sort of bring together a group of people with a shared identity.
One of the women at your retreat was not about joining a retreat with men there. It took months of her attending women's circles to feel, because of her past trauma, to feel like, okay, these men in this community, I'm going to try. I can do it. I feel safe enough to give it a try.
Yeah.
And so, it took time.
Yeah. I mean, that would be true for a lot of queer people as well, who only, would only go to a gathering of other queer people. I think a lot of folks of color probably too. I think we just want to be in communities that we know and where we feel comfortable. So I think it's like a both, like when you're bringing people together across identity, but you're also creating space where people can work within their community.
It just has me wondering more and more, like what, cis men like myself can do to break down these barriers and open things up. Or I don't know. It seems like we, the collective we, have been the cause of so much of this. And I truly believe, particularly based on the data I've been collecting over the years with the mushrooms, that there is a powerful resurgence of the feminine, and I just want to help with that. I don't know. It's a big Marianne 2024.
Marianne. He's getting into politics now. So weird.
I voted for Obama in the first election. And then I was like, you know what? This is just more of the fucking same. This is the fucking same thing. And so, I've refused to do this vote for the lesser of two evils. I'm not going to fucking do it. My vote is a vote of no confidence, if anything. And I finally feel like there is someone, a woman, Marianne Williamson, who can.
Oh yeah.
Most people don't even know. Like that's what I'm saying. Like the established white male, and I don't give a damn if they do have a black gay woman as the press secretary. It's still the same. Yeah. It's still the same energy, the same spirit running. I feel like. Yeah. Because it's shutting down, the voices that need to be heard, and propping up the voices that suit your agenda. And I want to hear everybody's fucking voice. I want to hear our leaders speaking a message of love. Yeah. I listened to a talk that she gave, or a little clip of a talk that she gave a few years back. And she was saying, if all of the women went and laid down in the street and said, no, we are not going to invade Iraq. We are not going to bomb more women and children. We are not going to destroy more cities. Yeah. Just think like that's what we need. We need it so bad. So much violence and war and subjugation of somebody just because you don't fucking understand. Like burning women at the stake because they fucking knew how to heal people with plants. It is ending. It's going to end. It is shifting, and I'm grateful to be part of it. And that has been one of the big, I don't know how this lands. I don't like I'm saying things that I don't know how, like to say it lands necessarily, but, that is one of the main takeaways that I have gotten out of working with gay men, particularly over the last 10 years or so, is that the spirit of humanity is ready for some softness. It's ready for some love. It's ready for some acceptance, and not tolerance, like celebrating everybody for who they are. We don't fucking tolerate each other. We love each other. We celebrate each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this idea of like toxic masculinity that we think about, it hurts women, it hurts queer people, but you know what? It hurts men. Yeah. I mean, it really hurts. It keeps men from being all of themselves, from being gentle when they want to be, or being like vulnerable. And, it hurts it sort of hurts all of us.
Well, it hurts the men first, and then they hurt women, and then they hurt,
That's right.
others.
That's right.
I know we're shifting. I know that psychedelics are coming back into the mainstream and the zeitgeist in order to help bring about that balance. And I just, like your suffering over all these years wasn't for nothing.
Yeah.
It wasn't for nothing. And I really thank you for being yourself, accepting yourself who you are, because you are helping to change this world.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yep. I feel that too. I feel like it's not suffering in vain, and it's not suffering if you can help other people heal. So I'm grateful. I mean, that's how I feel about you all, though. Like, I'm so grateful to both of you I know it's a sacrifice. I know what you do is like hard work, but oh my goodness, in service of something so important. I mean, it's just amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of people to thank, including yourself, people that have stepped out. And it doesn't even have to be in the psychedelic realm, but I mean, what you did in your late 20s to say, like, this is me, and I'm gonna jump off the cliff, and I'm gonna just see what happens, because at the end of the day, like, you're you.
Yeah.
You are a creation of the all.
That's
that
right.
is, and that is so perfect. And that is, we're continuing to do the work of people like yourselves and so many other people who've come before us. So I'm really grateful.
Yes, you, and let's also appreciate that team of folks who are there so deeply. What an amazing group.
Yeah.
Beautiful people, every one of them, just kind and generous. And
yeah, we got a good bunch of people.
Yeah, I really do.
I did used to say, I forgot about that until just now here, that there were times when I would speak publicly in the early 2000s about psychedelics, and I would say publicly, I think that the psychedelic movement needs to take cues from the LGBT movement and just this is who we are.
yeah,
And I love like the courage. I mentioned to you, I think Ross Bleckner, this gentleman that I worked with in Jamaica, who was in New York in the height of the AIDS crisis, and just thinking about, I mean, in the 80s, you were one of them, and people that were coming out like that,
yeah,
it was life threatening.
it was.
It was life threatening.
Yes.
So that's the symbol that is for so many other people to stand up and claim their authenticity. It's just so touching, so powerful.
Yeah. I mean, it's still, and still is in some ways life threatening. I mean, there's like the moment, and talk about like needing love in this moment and in our political systems. There is such a hateful movement right now, especially around trans people, to take away their health care, to keep them out of schools, to not let them, for God's sakes, not to let trans girls play sports if they want to. Like, these are like kids who want to play ball. And it's, I think like in these movements, we just see like this pendulum swing, and the pendulum is swinging toward a really hateful place right now. It's a really difficult, dark moment in some ways. So that's why it's even more important that people find like that source of light, that's that source of hope for themselves, and like that, they're who they are at their core, because right now people are really, building a movement off of dismantling trans identity in a way I just haven't seen in a long time.
A centering for everything, like we are so polarized in politics and religion and socially. And so the more we can just kind of bring it back to like, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
We're all in this together.
The circles that we have, that is such an important part of them, and something that I'm so grateful for Eric for like leading the way in this, and integration circles in Jamaica, and bringing that this mentality back here to Sanctuary of we are different and we are going to see things differently as individuals, and bring that with compassion to the circles, and let's practice listening to each other, because it has been, not a rare occurrence where it comes out that people are admitting like I'm racist or I'm homophobic and I did this like horrible thing to someone. It's, when we can learn to practice communicating these things with each other, like that, I feel like that is a sweet spot in growth.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say there was actually a pretty powerful conversation at the retreat among several white men about, the history of racism and how much it had marred, our perspective and how it's in a recovery period. I mean, I still consider myself like in recovery from racism. I grew up as as fucking blatant racist.
Yep.
And it wasn't until I moved to Louisville and I started thinking very differently, and especially like I never met a gay man or woman until we moved to Louisville in my 20s. And I remember thinking like, this guy's cool as shit. What the fuck? Like, I mean, I've always, I think I mentioned to you, I've felt safer in gay communities than hetero for sure. As a psychedelic person who is, centered on like on Ethiopian studies and shit. Anyway.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely, because that in those communities, they share that experience of being misunderstood. I mean, that's what, that's why I ran to Nikki, when I got out of the car, because I knew this person would understand my trepidation, my feeling scared. Yeah.
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 Well, I think 2 hours is probably good.
So good.
I've got more.
No,
There's more. I got more I'd like to talk about, but we'll save it for another day, maybe.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
For sure.
I love it.
Thank you so much for coming over here and sharing your story.
Oh my
and
goodness.
Just doing it with love and intentions of spreading that
It's
to
a
other
thrill.
people.
It's an absolute thrill. I'm so excited to do it. Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our pleasure.
So go ahead.
Almost missed out on that. What does psilocybin say to you, Brian?
Oh, I love this. Psilocybin says to me that who I really am is love. At the core, at the innermost part, we're just love. And I think it's helping me remember that.
Perfect.
I love that you said we,
Yes.
right? First you said me and then you said we.
Yeah.
Because I think even the oppressors, if we use that word, they are love in a shell of fear.
Yep.
I really believe that every human being at the very center, that everything, that love is at the center of it.
That's right.
And it's trauma or abuse or it's fear that creates these barriers and walls that we put up. And yeah.
I deeply believe that. I think it's the way I've tried to do my work, is to remember the most adamant, anti-LGBT person is at the end of the day also someone who's experienced hurt. Oppressors are also often oppressed people. If I can remember that, I can remember there's a core of love in that person that they just haven't accessed yet, I can deal with them in a really different way. They're not that, so I don't have to think about them as the enemy. I just think about them as also someone carrying around, a lot of hurt.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Brian.
Yeah. Thank you.
all.